Hi, my name's Rich, and today I'd like to talk about Rime of the Frost Maiden. I'm going to analyse the structure of the game. It's been split into 7 chapters, and it will take you from level 1 all the way up to level 11. The way it's been divided is that chapter 1 and 2 are sandboxes. They revolve around the 10 towns in Icewind Dale, and each town has an individual mission, tavern, a shop, and a little bit of personality. Of course, it's the DM's responsibility to try and expand where they need to, and they don't need to use all of the towns, but be aware that when the players go to each town and do the missions, or choose not to do the missions, they might get a hero's welcome, or they might get a chilly reception, if you'll excuse the cold pun. It's a good idea from a game design standpoint between levels 1 and 4 to get the players interested in the world and make them feel like it's an open world, it's a sandbox, and they have choices, they have options, they can choose to continue as much as they want. And as a DM, just like a game developer, you shouldn't pull back the curtain. You should give them the idea that the possibilities are endless. That's one of the beauties about video games. It doesn't matter how much mechanical nonsense is happening behind the scenes or how much you're improvising. As long as in front of the screen it looks like everything is slick, polished, well presented, and a cohesive world, it helps get the players immersed. And this brings you from level 1 to level 4, and I think that it's a good idea because the lower levels are always focused on low stakes. So the idea of helping a town out is definitely between level 1 and 5. Once you get past level 5, there is a definite power spike and a shift in focus. Instead of focusing on a small town, you're focusing on a region or an area. And of course you have the 4 levels of scope in D&D. 1 to 5 is the small town's heroes. 6 to 11 is more county or the region. Then 11 to 15 is saving the world, a high stakes sort of end game. And then 15 plus is the players are overpowered, so it gets almost metaphysical. You're trying to save the universe or trying to bend reality and influence the whole world at large. But I digress. Let's get back to Icewind Dale. And the 10 towns is subarctic winter or twilight. They're the two main weather conditions. I think there's 4 hours. There will be 4 hours of daylight, which is a very different way to approach this. Makes the players feel like something's off, something's different. It's not the world they're used to. And being able to make the players feel like they're in a brand new, interesting world with unexplored possibilities and a sense of wonder is definitely needed. In the book, each of the 10 towns has some sort of adventure, an NPC, a map, a tavern and a shop. And to be honest with you, unless the players make a point of going out of the way, that's all you really need. It serves a functional purpose, and if the players want to go off on a tangent, then it's up to the DM to improvise and try and accommodate what the players want to do. But I think at the start, before you even start playing, it's a good idea to all sit down in session 0, inform them that the tone is going to be dark, bleak, heavy, without being too depressing. Some players want depressing. I think that 4 hours of daylight, the harsh weather conditions, it's a very isolated sort of story to tell. And there are definitely horror elements incorporated in the game. For example, at the end of the book, Chris Perkins in an epilogue states that some of the influences were The Thing and the Aliens movie, H.P. Lovecraft's To the Mountains of Madness. So you definitely get a cold, dark vibe from it. And chapter 2 focuses on travelling, wilderness, and it gives you lots of different tables to roll on and randomised events. So it makes sure that if someone has read part of this book, they still don't know what to expect. It has some replayability, which I think with these stories, an open sandbox is a good idea, and I don't know if replayability is a good idea because generally speaking, you'll buy the book and use it for one game with your regular players. It's just fringe cases where people will reuse the book and run the campaign multiple times. And this is good to accommodate for them, and I think it would be good for Adventurers League sort of things, but most of the people that are buying this, it's just to try and tell the story from start to finish. And of course with Chapter 2, it gives you more sandbox things to mess around with. After the initial allowance of letting the players navigate their own way around it, it's up to the DM to get the players hooked into the story. That starts at Chapter 3, Sunblight. So Chapter 3, there's an invasion of Dark Dwarves, the Druga, an introduction of the Big Bad, some hints about the future of where the story's going, and a really, really cool moment. In Chapter 3, your party finds out about the Druga, and they're building a giant glass mechanical dragon that's going to try and destroy some of the towns. And that leads you on to Chapter 4, where you have a dilemma, a choice. Do you attack the dwarves, or do you travel back to the towns and try and save them? An issue I've seen brought up is that players need to find a trigger to figure out the plans of attack for the dragon. And without the route of the dragon, it's very difficult to guess which way to go to save which town first. It's not explicitly written, but the DM should take some responsibility in trying to put it in front of the players. If you have to be a bit ham-fisted with it, then so be it. As long as the players feel like they found it organically, then that's the main thing. And there is a last stand with the dragon at the biggest of the 10 towns. I think with the travel times there are some inconsistencies, and the DM, the Dungeon Master, must have some leeway, try and accommodate for that. If the players find ways to go faster, for example casting haste on some of the sled dogs, or I don't know, using a wind spell to try and get them there faster, then that's always good. And in Chapter 4 you get introduced to some NPCs that try and help the party. The NPCs show up out of the blue the way it's written, so you have to try and introduce them in an organic way. And I think it's a good test of skills for a DM. This module is not for beginners, not by a long shot. And once that's been resolved, you move on to Chapter 5, Auriel's Abode. The players need to recover items from the Frost Maiden's homeland. There are some amazing maps in this, and the idea of sneaking in, trying to steal these items, and not necessarily needing to kill the Frost Maiden, it allows for some variety. It gives the players an objective and doesn't tell them an exact way to do it, so that gives space for some player freedom and lets them breathe. And over the course of the past chapter or two, you've introduced the idea of the Frost Maiden, the fact that she's keeping the land in an eternal winter, which helps set up why the land is so dark and gives the players some motivation. If they're invested in the land, it'll give them motivation to try and help save the land and defeat the Frost Maiden. In the writing, she's classed as a minor god, so that shows the players the power that the Frost Maiden possesses. So to defeat a minor god is a major task. One criticism I've seen of Chapter 5 and the book in general is that in the introduction, the first 2 chapters, the players are given freedom and they're kind of pushed towards a good, lawful good, and then when we get to Chapter 5, the characters have to pass some tests, and some of them are a bit morally grey. They have to make tough decisions. It doesn't always align with the sunny, happy, cheery characters that some of the players might have made. So in Chapter 3 you'd go to level 4 or 5, by Chapter 4 you'd be at level 6, by Chapter 5 you'd be at level 7, and at Chapter 6 you'd be at level 8. Chapter 6 is called Caves of Hunger. They have to find this city that has been plummeted underground and covered in glacier, snow, ice, that sort of thing. Well, thanks for watching the first part of the video. I've decided to cut it into 2 parts because I want to make sure that you can relax and grab a snack, take a break, and come back for the second half. And don't forget to subscribe and click the like button if you enjoyed watching this video. Every like is appreciated. And I'll speak to you soon. Have a nice day. Goodbye.